What's going on, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden, and in this episode, I'm going to give you guys some good news and some bad news, since you guys have been, no doubt, same as me, going through what seems like an unholy onslaught of bad news over the last month since October 7th, and the Palestine Gaza issue has been plaguing everybody's worst nightmares for the last 30 days. I figured we'd go through the good news first, and this, it might not seem like good news, but I'm going to explain to you in the second part, during the bad news, why it actually is good. And unfortunately, what it means is that each one of us individually, especially content creators, but people that do PFC-style politics, I'm going to ask you to sacrifice a little bit. I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to like, but we have to keep on fighting this fight the way that we've been fighting, and I know it's uncomfortable, so we're going to cover that in the second part. But the good news is that now, according to Truth Out, which I'm going to read to you here, Joe Biden is looking to conduct all arms deals with Israel in complete secrecy without congressional oversight or public oversight. And I know that sounds like bad news, but stick with me here for a few minutes. Let's read you here from Sharon Zhang. This came out November 2nd. Truth Out. In a highly unusual move, the White House has requested for it to be able to conduct arms deals with Israel in complete secrecy, without oversight from Congress or the public, in a time when the U.S. is supporting military that experts say has been committing war crimes in Gaza and beyond. The White House made a request within a $106 billion supplemental defense spending request sent on October 20th. As reported by Women for Weapons Trade Transparency in these times, the White House is asking for up to $3.5 billion in military funding for Israel to be able to purchase weapons and other equipment from the sources like the U.S. military and the U.S. defense contractors, without the spending having to be approved by or even disclosed to Congress. Now that $3.5 billion, remember, Joe Biden's pushing for $14 billion extra, in addition to the $4 billion a year that we already give to Israel yearly for this exact thing. So that's, roughly $18 billion. Remember, in America, we could solve homelessness permanently for $20 billion for the amount of money we're about to give to Israel and are already giving on a yearly basis. Crucially, such notifications to Congress are also logged in the Federal Register, where they are viewable to the public. But the White House is trying to get rid of that transparency for Israel for funding through September 2025 and potentially beyond if Israel chooses to set aside funding before then. Experts have said that the move is alarming and rare. Quote, "I've never seen anything like it," said Josh Paul, the former director of Congressional and Public Affairs for the Bureau of Political Military Affairs in the State Department. He told These Times. Within the State Department, where he worked for 11 years, Paul helped the Bureau in its work on arms deals and resigned in protest of a push to increase arms sales to Israel amid its genocidal siege in Gaza. Quote, "A proposal in a legislative request to Congress to waive congressional notification entirely for foreign military financing, funded foreign military sales, or direct commercial contracts is unprecedented in my experience," Paul said. Quote, "Frankly, it's an insult to congressional oversight prerogatives." Paul added that the White House is already allowed to unilaterally approve foreign military transactions in emergency situations, but still has to notify Congress. The move, then, seems calculated to specifically create opacity around Israel sales. Quote, "This doesn't actually reduce the time, it just reduces the oversight," he said. So what that tells you is that Joe Biden, the White House, are actually looking to completely hide their entire role that they're playing in funding this genocide. And I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. If you're watching this show, chances are you are. Israel has bombed multiple hospitals, including Al-Ali Hospital, which is the one where that was the first one, and they killed hundreds, and then they bombed Al-Shifa Hospital. They bombed an ambulance outside the front of a hospital. They bombed, and right now they're trying to make Gaza not only rubble, but literally unlivable. Like, you can't move back in because they're bombing all of like the, places where they're generating electricity, or if their water sources. Critical infrastructure that is clearly civilian infrastructure is being bombed left and right. At least the death toll passed, today is the 7th, it passed 10,000. on the 6th, arguably on the 5th. There's still thousands of people stuck under the rubble. At least 2/3 of the deaths so far, so roughly 6,500 to 7,000, are women and children. So there's nothing you can call this other than genocide, especially since the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, went public saying that everybody is Hamas in Gaza, meaning that everybody's a terrorist, even the little babies and women, they're all terrorists. And the previous defense minister of Israel has called people in Gaza and Palestinians animals. So I don't know what you can call this other than genocide, and they want to be able to do it completely in the dark. Not only have they cut the internet to Gaza, it's been on and off since they tried to cut it off, they're also trying to hide it from the general public and even from Congress. Now, that's actually, believe it or not, the good news. Let me explain why. And here's the second part. Here's the bad news. The reason that Joe Biden has to do this is because even he, in his demented, completely neoliberal brain, understands that the PR blowback for being on the side of Israel on this is going to be suicidal. And that's why a lot of our politicians right now have gone quiet. And the stupid ones, the really, really stupid ones, are committing career suicide by siding with Israel. And if you don't believe me, look at the TikTok mentions. I stand with Palestine versus I stand with Israel was 5-1. 300 million mentions through a certain amount of weeks for I stand with Palestine versus about 60 million for Israel. I'm not a mathematician, but that's a roughly 5-1. Zionists, understand, you are very much alone. For every one of you calling for more genocide and talking about this as somehow needed, I don't care what your justification is, you are outnumbered. There's 5 more of us than there are of you. Five of us for each one of you. Understand you're alone. And then the other evidence is you've seen the size of the rallies. I've seen protests in Washington, D.C. was 300,000 plus. And I've seen at least 2 or 3 other protests that were so big you can't even capture them with a camera. There's crowds as far as the eye can see. Istanbul, Yemen were 2 huge ones, but I've seen Berlin, Stockholm, I've seen everything, Glasgow. Every country is having enormous protests in favor of the Palestinians. So just understand, these people understand, even Joe Biden understands that it is political suicide to get behind this any further, which is why he wants to keep us all in the dark. Doesn't want us to know how much he's helping fund the flattening of these kids. So the bad news, guys, I've heard some of the commentators, I swear, looking at the eyes of the commentators that I normally watch lately, you can kind of tell that everybody's been going through it. It seems like those old pictures of like soldiers that were about to go off to war before the war, and then after they get back from Afghanistan or Iraq or Vietnam or whatever, and the difference in their facial lines and their expressions, you can just tell that the person that came home from that war is just not the same person that they were before the war. And that's the look I see on all of my fellow commentators' faces right nowadays. We're all going through it. But I've seen some people saying that they have to give it a break, that they have to look away. And I'm going to tell you, it's okay to take a break. Go out and, after scrolling through your social media and seeing nothing but the images of destroyed families and flattened kids and dead women and children and corpses piling up everywhere, I understand. You got to look away every once in a while. But I've seen people that want to give up and they want to stop looking altogether, and I'm going to ask you to not do that. Okay? And I promise I will also not look away. Unfortunately, the only thing that is going to force our government in the United States, but also across the world, the only thing that is going to force the West to cut off this horrible genocide is if we do what we've been doing, which is making sure that we document all of this and that we absorb it. You have to bear witness to this. I'm sorry. It's the only way. Because it's seeing all this horrible stuff and the trauma that it's going to cause the world, everybody that has to see this, it'll motivate you to not stop fighting. It's the only thing that's going to make you mad enough and disgusted enough to continue with what we're doing, so you can't look away. I'm sorry. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to look away. I can't let you do that. You have to keep watching, and I promise you I will too. Now take care of yourselves mentally. Hug your kids, scream into a pillow. You will cry. You will throw up. Expect it. But we can't stop. That's the bad news. Because, appropriately enough, the only thing that is going to get this to stop, the only thing that will stop those horrific images that are burnt onto the insides of your eyelids every time you lay down at night, I know because I'm seeing them too, is if enough people become disgusted as you are. You have to spread the word and show everybody how awful these horrific things are so that the horrific images will stop. And that's the only way it will stop. I'm sorry. So I can't let you look away, and I won't either, but you're not alone. I promise you, you will never be alone. You're on the right side of history. And, for me, I can't look at myself in the mirror if I don't speak up and if I don't subject myself to it, because it feels wrong. It feels wrong to ignore and turn away just because it disgusts you. I mean, it feels like you're somewhat responsible for making sure that everybody understands exactly how horrible this is. So for me, I feel a personal responsibility, especially since I'm in the U.S. and my country is giving billions of dollars to Israel and now trying to do it completely in the dark. I have to continue to share this stuff, and I have to continue to let it hurt me, because it's that hurt and that pain. I have to absorb that, let it traumatize me, and understand that if I look away, it's never going to end. It's just because you look away from it doesn't mean that it's stopped. We have to actually stop it. So that's what I'm asking of you guys. I know that that's not a popular opinion. I know that this hurts everybody. I can tell. I can see it on the looks of all of my fellow commentators' faces. I can see it on the looks of my fellow PFC fighters' faces when I talk to them in real life. I can't remember ever feeling this traumatized being involved in politics since I started really paying attention. I will never forget. I will never forget the things I've seen. But that's not the worst thing in the world, because when the going gets tough, I can summon those horrible images, and it'll give me the motivation to make sure that that shit never happens again. That's what we've got to do. But the multi-billion-dollar mainstream media corporate propaganda apparatus is getting its ass kicked right now. We are getting the views. We need to bring as many eyeballs to this as possible, because the more eyeballs we bring to it, the faster it's going to come to a stop. And that is our defense, and I am very proud of the people that were able to debunk Israeli Hasbara propaganda on the fly. This is PFC operating, not even at full capacity, but this is the first atrocity that I have seen where indie media is well connected and journalists are well connected with promoters and other cogs in the PFC apparatus, that we are actually fighting it back. We are actually beating a multi-billion-dollar propaganda apparatus on the fly, and we're getting better at it, and we need to get better, and we need more people. So lastly, guys, I'm gonna ask you, if you need an outlet, other than just screaming into a pillow or punching a punching bag or having a cry 5 times a day, if you start your own PFC, do what I do. Cover this in your own way. Be honest. You can actually make a difference. You just need to get as many eyeballs on this stuff as possible and talk about it. Don't ever stop talking about it, and don't look away. And you can do exactly what I do, and it costs you nothing but your time. We need you. So let's do this. Let's keep paying attention. And we will pay attention until this stops. Period. So keep fighting that good fight out there, guys. I got 2 more episodes ready. They're written. One's filmed. We'll have to see if I actually get it up today, though. And, we have no choice but to keep fighting the fight. We do it because we can, but we also have to do it because it's necessary. They're just going to keep doing horrible things until we show the elites and the oligarchs who are doing this to us that every horrible thing that you do, we're going to make sure we get it on fucking camera and make sure everybody hates you for it. Stuff like this in the movies, but also in real life. Events like this, highly televised events that really rip your guts out, are the catalysts for actual revolution. Look how big the George Floyd protests were. Why is that? Because everybody watched him die on camera, and it just stuck with everybody. Other things can happen. This is in Hunger Games. They, spoiler alert, they kill that little girl, Rue, and it was her dying on camera that sparked the revolution. The Palestinians are doing that for us right now. They're being brave, and they are our martyr. So we have to bear witness to it, and it just might be the thing that sparks a global revolution, but it won't work if we turn away and ignore it. So I'm with you guys. I'm not going to turn away either. It's okay to take mental breaks, but at the end, you got to get back out there. No matter how hard they hit us, we have to hit them back. We have to hit them back harder, and that requires us to just keep paying attention and doing what we're doing. Keep fighting that fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.